Welcome back from the break. In this segment, you'll learn how administrators configure direct routing to meet users' need for telephony through a PSTN. You can use Microsoft Teams direct routing to integrate with your existing telephony infrastructure and receive or make calls through public switch telephone networks or PSTN. Upon completion of this lesson, you should be able to explain how to configure and connect a session border controller (SBC). Describe the process for configuring simple and advanced voice routing. Describe how to provision user, implement number translation, create and assign dial plans. Explain how to configure and connect a survivable branch appliance or SBA. Let's get started with module number 3. Design direct routing call flows. Direct routing is a way to provide PSTN, public switch telephone network, connection to Microsoft Teams user so that they can make and receive external phone calls on Teams. Traditionally, for an organization, internal and external telephone calls have been delivered using a private branch exchange (PBX) phone system, usually located on the organization data center. Microsoft Teams can be used as a business telephony solution, replacing an existing PBX phone system and its associated equipment and costs with a cloud-based system to provide full PBX voice calling capabilities inside and outside your organization. Voice routing helps you dictate how calls are routed through your session border controllers. There are 4 steps of providing a direct route. Follow this step for your deployment. First, connect the SBC with Teams phone and validate the connection. Second, enable user for direct routing, voice and voicemail. Third, configure voice routing. And finally, number translation. Let's have a look at each of these in detail in the next couple of slides. For the first one, connect the SBC with Teams phone and validate the connection. Microsoft partners with selected session border controller vendors to certify that their SBCs work with direct routing. Microsoft works with each vendor to jointly work on the SIP interconnection protocols, perform intense tests using a third-party lab. Only devices that pass the test are certified. Run daily tests with all certified devices in production and pre-production environment. Validating the devices in pre-production environment guarantees that new version of direct routing code in the cloud will work with certified SBCs. Establish a joint support process with the SBC vendor. Next, we'll talk about the enable users for direct routing, voice and voicemail. When you are ready to enable users for direct routing, follow this step. Create a user in Microsoft 365 or Office 365 and assign a Teams phone license. Ensure that the user is home in Microsoft Teams. Configure the phone number and enable enterprise voice and voicemail. And finally, assign Teams only mode to user. Moving on, we'll look into creating a custom voice routing policy. A voice routing policy is a container for PSTN usage record. You create and manage voice routing policy by going to voice routing policy in the Microsoft Teams Admin Center or by using Windows PowerShell. It's important to know that assigning a voice routing policy to a user doesn't enable them to make PSTN calls in Teams. You also need to enable the users for Teams phone direct routing and complete other configuration steps. Let's have a look at creating a number translation. Sometimes, tenant administrators may want to change the number for outbound and or inbound call based on the patterns they created to ensure interoperability with session border controller. This article describes how you can specify a number translation rules policy to translate numbers to an alternate format. You can use the number translation rule policy to translate numbers for the following: inbound calls, call from a PSTN endpoint, caller to a Teams client, colleague. Outbound calls, calls from a Teams client, caller to a PSTN endpoint, colleagues. The policy is applied at the SBC level. You can assign multiple translation rules to an SBC, which are applied in the order that they appear when you list them in PowerShell. You can also change the order of the rules in the policy. Now, we'll be looking into implementing SIP trunking with direct routing. There are multiple ways of implementing a direct route. One is to obtain a SIP trunk directly from an SIP trunk provider, and they host the SBC on your behalf. The other method also outlined in this module is to implement an SBC or SBA and then interface to the SIP trunk. Organization will use a SIP trunk from an organization should they want to simplify the installation and have no requirement for a session border controller. SIP trunks provider will supply the SBC as part of the service and is a simplified way of doing things. The reason why you would choose an SBC is to provide more granularity and control, to provide linkage to third-party applications such as contact center and compliance recording, or if you want to manage the migration seamlessly from one solution to another while keeping the SBC upstream from Teams and the existing telephone system. Let's talk about the first one, add a domain to Microsoft 365 tenant. Before you can continue configuring your direct routing setup, you must make sure you have your desired custom domain added to your tenant. Without a custom domain in your tenant, you will not be able to accept the signaling and will ultimately reject the information from the SIP trunk provider. If you did not already do this, follow this step to add, set up, or continue setting up a custom domain in your tenant. The user created for each domain would need a single E3 or E5 license assigned to activate the domain. Once the domain is activated and the license can be removed from each respective user. Important, do not delete this account for the duration of your Teams direct routing service. Understanding Office 365 voice routing. Office 365 voice routing is comprised of three configuration items: voice routing policy, PSTN usage, and voice route. Voice routing policy. This item is granted to user via the grant CS online voice routing policy command and detect what calls the user can make. For PSTN usage, global configuration item to map a voice routing policy to a voice route. It serves no other purpose. And finally, voice route. Voice route based on a number patterns to match using regular expression, route calls to a specific gateway in the online PSTN gateway list array. There are also priority options to control which route should be higher priority than others. This is useful for failover configuration. Next, we'll have custom tenant SBC pairing. If you are not tied to an existing phone system, many experts recommend using the carrier hosting model. In this model, the customer picks the provider of their choice to host the direct routing SBC and to handle telephony services. Customer will use a carrier SBC, which is paired with the Office 365 domain and then tied to multiple Office 365 tenants via subdomains. Here are some key facts about the carrier hosting model. Since calls are not routed based on DID, each customer instead get a unique SBC FQDN as a subdomain to the carrier base domain, which is then added as a domain in the customer's tenant. Notably, all customers will have the same SBC. For each carrier-hosted SBC, organization will only need to set up a configuration once per tenant. This will cover all SIP domain within that Office 365 tenant. We'll talk about configure emergency calling for direct routing. If you have deployed Teams phone direct routing in your organization, you can use emergency voice routing policy in Microsoft Teams to set up emergency numbers and specify how emergency calls are routed. An emergency voice routing policy determines whether enhanced emergency services are enabled for users who are assigned the policy. The numbers used to call emergency services, for example 911 in the United States, and how calls to emergency services are routed. You can manage emergency voice routing policy by going to Voice Emergency Policies in the Microsoft Teams Admin Center or by using Windows PowerShell. The policy can be assigned to users and network site. For users, you can use the global alt-wide default policy or create and assign custom policy. Users will automatically get the global policy unless you create and assign a custom policy. Keep in mind that you can edit the setting in the global policy, but you can't rename or delete it. For network side, you create and assign custom policies. If you assign an emergency voice routing policy to a network site and the user, and if that user is at that network site, the policy that's assigned to the network site overrides the policy that's assigned to the user. Now let's talk about the extend Teams direct routing infrastructure. SBC are additional single points of failure in your environment, so it's very important to plan for disaster event not to lose PSTN connectivity for the user. So we will talk about setting up multiple SBC, configure a usage, create multiple voice users, and physical versus virtual SBC controller. For setting up multiple SBC, in this example, your priority is to ensure that calls to your US office location are working. Calls to all other numbers are a secondary priority. Therefore, you decide to set up your SBC like this. An SBC for making calls to the US office, a backup SBC in case SBC1 becomes unresponsive, and additional SBC for making calls to all other US and Canada numbers. Configuring a usage. Online PSTN usage are string values that are used for call authorization. An online PSTN usage link an online voice policy to a route. The set CS online PSTN usage command is used to add or remove phone usage to or from the usage list. This list is global, so it can be used by policies and routes throughout the tenant. You configure a single usage to cover all your US and Canada call routing by running the following command from the Microsoft Teams PowerShell module. Set -CS online PSTN usage, identify global usage, add US and Canada. With this command, you have configured a usage called US and Canada. Now, we will create multiple voice routes. Online voice routing policy are used in Microsoft Teams Phone direct routing scenario. Assigning your Teams user an online voice routing policy enable those users to receive and to place phone calls to the public switch telephone network by using your own premises SIP trans. Note that simply assigning a user an online voice routing policy will not enable them to make PSTN calls via Teams. Among other things, you will also need to enable those users for Teams phone, and we'll need to assign them an appropriate online voice policy. So for our earlier example, you then create multiple voice routes and associate them with your US and Canada usage. You create a voice route for making calls to the US office. Use sbc1.contoso.com for the SBC and set the route to priority 1. You create a backup route using backup SBC, SBC1A, but set its priority to 2. The backup route will be used if the first SBC becomes unavailable. Finally, you create a route for all other US and Canada numbers. Alright, right now we are talking about deploying and maintain an survivable branch appliance, or SBA. Occasionally, a customer site using direct routing to connect to Teams phone may experience an internet outages. Assume that the customer site calls temporarily cannot connect to the Microsoft Cloud through direct routing. However, the intranet inside the branch is still fully functional, and user can connect to the session border controller that is providing PSTN connectivity. This section of the module describes how to use a survivable branch appliance to enable Teams phone to continue to make and receive public switch telephone network calls in the case of an outages. So we will start with understanding the prerequisite. The SBA is a distributor code provided by Microsoft to SBC vendor who then embed code into their firmware or distribute it separately to have SBA run on a separate VM or hardware. To get the latest session border controller firmware with the embedded survivable branch appliance, contact your SBC vendor. In addition, the following is required. The SBC needs to be configured for media bypass to ensure that the Microsoft Teams client in the branch site can have media following directly with the SBC. TLS 1.2 should be enabled on the SBA VM or S. So how it works? During an internet outages, the Teams client should switch to the SBA automatically. An ongoing call should continue with no interruption at all. No action is required from the user. As soon as the Teams client detects that the internet is up and running and any outgoing calls are finished, the client will fall back to a normal operation mode and connect to other Teams services. The SBA will upload collector call data, record earlier statement. The SBA will upload collected call data records to the cloud, and call history will be updated so that this information is available for review by the tenant administrator. And finally, configuration of the SBA. For the SBA features to work, the Teams client needs to know which SBAs are available in each branch site and which SBAs are assigned to the users in that site. To connect your SBA to Teams phone, follow this step. First, create the SBAs. Second, create the Teams branch survivability policy. Third, assign the policies to users. And finally, register an application for the SBA with Azure Active Directory. Next, we'll have a demo on how to configure and deploy direct routing. As part of the expanding business, the organization has an existing SIP trunk into their primary data center. The contractual obligation means that it's more cost-effective to utilize the SIP trunk and move to Microsoft calling plans later. As part of the move, Megan will be moved from the old telephone system to the new Microsoft phone system solution. So right now, we'll configure the session border controller, and we'll install the services needed to ensure the custom domain and SBC work as expected. So right now for the first thing, we'll add the SBC to the tenant. Let's go to voice, direct routing, and then we'll go on to add, and we'll type in the domain. Alright, and then we'll click on save. Alright, so right now you have successfully verified that your custom domain and added SBC to that tenant. Alright, so as you can see right here, we have the second one right here. So right now, in the following task, we will download the DigiCert certification that we requested earlier so that you can use it for your SBC. So right now, we'll go to Outlook. Okay, we will be downloading the certification. Alright, so you can see that your certification are ready. So let's just download it. So it will be downloaded to the download folder. So you have successfully downloaded the certificate you requested in an earlier exercise and is now available to certify your SBC. Yep. So moving on, right now we'll go on to the scripts. And then we'll select import lab cert. So we'll just click on import lab certification. Okay, doesn't matter for the error. So it will still be importing the certificate and then we'll finish it right now. And you have successfully converted the certificate for the SBC right here. So in this task, we will be setting up a session border controller virtual machine resource. So we'll go to the Azure portal right now. Alright, so we'll create a resource and search for this. Okay. And click create. So for the resource group, let's create a new one. Then we'll just fill the name with SBC and oh, it's already. So why not we just use it, SBC right here. And then, or we can just create another resource group, no worries. So maybe SBC2. It's just a resource group right there. And for the virtual machine name, we'll just name it as SBC02. And for the username, we'll just name it as SBC admin. And the password, let me just key in the password right now. Alright, so let's review plus create. Alright, validation fields, no worries. We'll just go back to previous once again. And we'll do the review plus create. Okay, so review plus create right here. It's missing or not valid. Let's check what is missing. Okay, everything is good. How about here? Confirm password. So I missed that. So let's type it again. Okay, so review plus create, and it should be better right now. So they are running the final validation to make sure that the resource can be created. Okay, right now we can just go on and create. So you'll wait for the deployment to complete. So it will take a couple of time for that. Okay, so as you can see, the deployment is being submitted. And let's wait for it to complete. Yeah. All right, the deployment is complete. Let's go to the resource group. So we'll select the SBC02 IP. And we'll note of the public IP address because later on we'll be accessing that as well. Yeah. So here's the public IP address. We'll go on to open the Windows PowerShell. Okay, make sure it's open in the administrator mode. And we'll run the following command so that it has a session with the DNS server. Alright, so let's key in the credential. Alright, so we have login, and once the module is installed, you will see the command prompt again, and we will enter and modify the following command with our own lab number and public SBC IP address. Alright, so this is the command. So we will change the command with our own details right now. Okay. Which is 68322. And our public IP address, SBC IP address, yeah. So which is the one that we noted down just now. .20.169.156.24 and hit enter. Alright, so we have successfully created an SBC hosted inside Microsoft Azure. So let's right now we sign into the SBC. So we'll open up a new tab. You can just go to sbc01.lab 68322.0365ready.com. Alright, so right now we log on to the SBC using the following credential you configured earlier. Alright, so we will never save the password, and this is the interface for it, and you have successfully logged on to the SBC. So right now we will upload root certificates to the SBC. So in the following task, we will add the root certificate to the session border controller. Yep. So on the top menu, we'll go to IP network. And then we'll go to the security and TLS context. Okay, and we'll select a new. So enter the name as Teams TLS context as the name, and we'll change the TLS version to TLS version 1.2 and leave everything else the same. So we'll just apply this, and you can see it's created, and remember to save the configuration. Yeah. So we'll scroll down and we'll check the trusted root certificates. And in the trusted root certificate window, select import. So in here, we'll choose the file. So we'll go to our C, files, and we select all file so that we can see all the file, and we select this. All right, so file was successfully uploaded, so we'll close it. So we'll load the subsequent two more. So before that, let's have save it. If you see here, so you need to save it. So it will save the configuration. And let's move on to import again. And we will choose all file. And we will choose the dgcert trusted root.cert. Okay, this one is the one. And close. And remember to save it right up here. And finally, we need to import the next one. All right. Intermediate. Okay, this is the one. Close, and remember to save it. All right, so with that, we have successfully uploaded the root certificate to your SBC and can now continue with the next step. Yeah. Okay, we'll now be doing configure SIP interfaces on SBC. So right now, we'll go to the signaling and media. So select core entities. Okay, under core entities, you have this SIP interface. And we will select new. So we fill out the following information. So the names as Teams, network interfaces as 0, UDP port as 0, TCP port 0 as well, and TLS port is 5067. And enable TCP keep alive. So let's have a look at where is it. Enable TCP keep alive. Right now here, so we need to enable it. And we can select apply and save at the top. Yeah. Yes. So you have successfully configured SIP interfaces on the SBC. So moving on, we'll configure the proxy sets on SBC. So we'll select proxy set right here. And we'll select new. And we'll add in the following details. Teams. This is Teams as well. And the TLS context name is Teams TLS context. And proxy keep alive. So we'll choose using option. And proxy hotshot enable. Load balancing method to as random weight. And right now we just apply and remember to save it. So we have successfully configured the proxy sets on the SBC. Right now we are moving on with configure the proxy addresses interfaces on SBC. So you'll see this proxy address, right? Yeah. So you can see the proxy address 0 item. We'll select new and fill out the following information. So in the next task, we will configure the SBC proxy addresses interfaces. So under the proxy sets, we'll scroll down to proxy address 0 items. And we will click on new and fill out the following information. And then we'll apply. So add another proxy address by selecting new. Oh, before that, let's remember to save it for every changes that you are making. All right, new. And for the proxy address is sip2.pstnhub.microsoft.com. Proxy priority as 2 and random weight as 1. Okay, select apply. So we'll add another proxy address again. So, but before that, let's save it. So proxy address sip3.pstnhub.microsoft.com. And we apply. And right now we'll then save it and yes. So you have successfully configured proxy addresses on the SBC. Moving on, we'll configure the coder groups on SBC. So right here, you can see the coders and profile. We'll go to coder groups. And we'll go on to see right here. So if you see coder groups right now here, so we'll choose on this. And we'll configure the following coder's name. And then we'll select apply and save. So you have successfully configured coder groups on the SBC. So moving on, we'll configure the IP profiles on the SBC. So you can see right here the IP profile. And then we'll select new and configures the following. For the names, you'll just put on Teams. SBC media security mode is secured. And we'll search for the other configuration. So remove early media RTP detection mode. Okay, right here. So we'll move it by media. Extension coder group. We'll choose it as this. And RTCP mode, generate arrays. SIP update support, we will put it as not supported. Not supported. And remote read invite, supported only with SDP. Alright, and this is not supported. Okay, so for this is handle locally. And for this is, we will also put handle locally. And finally, inactive. So with this, we'll just apply and save it. So we have successfully configured the IP profile on the SBC. So moving on, we'll configure the IP groups on SBC. So you'll see under the core entities, we have IP groups. We'll select new and configure the following. IP profile 0, media room is 0 as well. Classify by proxy set disable. And for the local host name right here. So we have the local host name. Alright, it's here. So we'll type in the yes for this, and let's see what others configuration that we need to put right here. Okay, I think that should be all, and we'll just select apply and save. Alright, so we have configured the IP groups on the SBC. Moving on, we'll configure the SRTP on SBC. So we'll go to media, right here, and then media security. And we'll just enable this, right? Okay, and that's it. We'll just apply and apply it, and then later on we can just save it. Alright, so we have configured the SRTP on the SBC. Moving on, we have a few more steps. So we'll configure the message manipulation on SBC. So to create a message condition rule, we will go to message manipulation and select the message condition. and we'll select new. And we'll configure the names as themes. We'll select the editor right here, and we'll fill up with a command. Microsoft.com. And code. Yep. So save it and apply. And remember to save the configuration once again. And to create a classification rule under SBC, so we'll then select the classification. Alright, so under the classification, we'll select new and configure the following settings. Source IP address as 52.114. Destination host as sbc01.lab 68322.0365ready.com. And message condition as Teams. Action type as allowed. Source IP group as Teams as well. And then we'll apply and save. So we have configured the message manipulation on the SBC. Right now, we'll configure the final thing, which is the IP to IP calling rules on SBC. SBC right here, and IP to IP routing. We'll select new, and we'll create a rule with the following option. With the source IP group to any. And then request type is option. Destination type is destination address. Destination address is internal. And click apply. And save it. We'll select new again and create another rule with the following option. And apply. And remember to save it. So select new again. And we'll create another rule with the following option. Destination IP group as teams. Destination type as IP group. And right here, actually, we need to add a new one, and we'll fill out the information as SIP tron. And let's apply twice. Okay, and remember to click on new again. Oh, before new, we'll save it again. So SIP tron source IP group as SIP tron. Destination type IP group. Destination IP group is teams. Let's click apply and then save. Alright, so you have successfully configured the audio codes SBC to receive requests from the Microsoft 365 direct routing service. So yeah, we kind of can validate the SBC to be ready for Teams, but for right now, let's have a look at it. So what you can do is to monitor. And you can go to OP status and proxy set status. If you are in the real environment, you'll see them online for the 3 entries for the PSTN hub. Yeah, right now. So that's the if you are correctly configure all your things and able to continue with the deployment. In this demo, we will be doing the configure direct routing settings. We will create a direct routing policy, PSTN usage policy, and voice route to enable Megan Bowen to perform voice call over the SBC. Megan resides in a location where the telephone number assigned to her has a long-standing contract and requires her to continue to use the telephone service provider telephone number rather than moving to a calling plan from Microsoft. Long-term, the plan is to move the telephone number over to a calling plan. However, currently this is cost prohibitive. So let's create a voice routing policy with one PSTN usage. Yeah, so that right now, once we are doing that, we can later assign this policy to your user. So open up the PowerShell. Okay, a regular PowerShell. And we will connect to Microsoft Teams. Okay, we'll sign in to connect. Alright, so we are signing. So in Windows PowerShell, we will enter the following command to see that the existing PSTN usage in place. Okay, you can see what is in place and what usage plan are being assigned to the identity. So let's see. Alright, so I think there's none assigned so far. That's okay, right? So right now you'll run the different command to use to add or remove phone usage to or from the usage list. Yeah, so this list is global, so it can be used by policies and routes throughout the tenant. All right. So, and moving on, we'll run the following command again to create a new online voice routing policy. And online voice routing policy are used in Microsoft phone system direct routing scenario. Assigning your Teams user an online voice routing policy enable those users to receive and to place phone calls to the public switch telephone network by using your own premises SIP trunk. Okay. All right, so we have created that. So we'll also run the following command again. So that to create a new online voice route. An online voice route contains instructions that tell Microsoft Teams how to route calls from Office 365 users to phone numbers on the public switch telephone network or a private branch exchange. Okay, just need to make sure I change my lab number. And enter. All right. So, and moving on, we'll run the next command. And this command returns information about the online voice route configured for use in your tenant. Online voice route contains instructions that tell Microsoft Teams how to route call from Office 365 user to phone number on the public switch telephone network or a private branch exchange. All right, so these are all the details that you have been configured. Yeah, so you have successfully created a voice routing policy with a PSTN usage. Moving on, we'll create a new voice routing policy named North America and assign it to Megan Bowen. Yeah. So we'll create another voice routing policy with the PSTN usage you created in the earlier task and assign this policy to your user. All right. So we'll move on with another command right here. All right, so this has been done and we'll run the next command, and the next command will return information about users who have account home on Microsoft Teams. All right, so you can see that North America has been there, right? So, and you have successfully used PowerShell to assign your voice routing policy to your users. Next, we'll enable users for direct routing voice and voicemail. Right now, we'll enable the end user for voice services through the direct route, assign the telephone number, and enable the user for dial pad service. So we'll run the following command, which assign a phone number to a user or resource account. When you assign a phone number, the enterprise voice enable flag is automatically set to true. So this command does not provide any output. So just leave it there. So, and hence we have successfully assigned a telephone number to the end user, and you have enabled the end user for the dial pad. Next, we will configure a voice routing, and we'll assign a voice route to a user, and this will grant the user the ability to make calls to the policy applied. Yep. So in Windows PowerShell, we'll enter the following command, and this will assign the policy to the identified user. In this instance, the identity is Megan Bowen, and we're assigning her the North American policy. Okay, let me type it again. Alright, so this command does not provide any output as well. So you have successfully assigned a telephone number to the end user, and you have enabled the end user for the dial pad. Right now, we will translate numbers to an alternate format. So we will create a normalization record for a 4-digit dial plan. Right now, let's go on to our Microsoft Edge browser and go to our Microsoft Teams Admin Center. Right here. And in the left navigation pane, let's select voice. And we have dial plans. And select the global or wide default. So under the normalization rule, we'll add once again. And under the name, we'll enter 4-digit extension. And under the description, we'll just put 4-digit extension dialing. So select the length of the number dial begin with. The length of the number, here, bin dial is 4. Okay, and then we'll do this, add this number to the beginning. So, and right now here, so add the number to the beginning. So with plus 142 4555. Yeah. So we can test this rule. So by typing 1 2 3 4 and test. Alright, so you can see that the output should be 142 5555 1234. So we have successfully assigned a 4-digit extension dial to the global group. Right now, we will configure the emergency location identification number. So we'll assign the emergency location identification number to a location existing in Microsoft Teams Admin Center already. So we'll go to location. emergency address. So we'll select the office address. All right. So we'll review the setting right here. All right, so I guess this is all set. So you can check all the settings right here. Okay, and as you can see here, it's validated as well. So, and we have successfully assigned the number to the location for emergency addresses, and by reviewing all these settings as well. All right, so moving on, we'll deploy location-based routing based off of subnet. So right now we'll go to location, network topology, and we'll proceed to add and give the network site the name of Washington. On at the subnet. All right, and then we can save it. All right, so we'll now go to voice and direct routing. All right, so under the location-based routing, so we need to turn it on. And also let's see some other settings that we have right here. And also we will select the gateway site ID to Washington. Okay, and select save. Okay, so we have successfully implemented the location-based routing, which will route your calls dependent upon the machine's local subnet which is registered to. This concludes module number 3. Let's recap all the content that you have seen in this module. You have learned how to configure and connect a session border controller, the process for configuring simple and advanced voice routing, how to provision users, implement number translation, create and assign dial plans, and how to configure and connect a survivable branch appliance. We will now take a 10-minute break. See everyone back here, then when we will start module 4.